The horrific terror attack in Baisaran near Pahalgam has united Kashmiris in grief and anger. What is the road ahead then for those in the valley? Is the valley simply fatigued with the constant terror machine? Joining me now is a special guest to discuss that issue. Haseeb Drabu is former finance minister of Jammu and Kashmir, someone who's tracked the region for decades and is, of course, from the Kashmir Valley. Haseeb Drabu, thank you very much for joining me. You've written recently, rather evocatively, saying every Kashmiri is shocked into silence, speechlessness and shame and grieving. What is it about this particular incident in Baisaran near Pahalgam that you think has pushed Kashmiris now to talk about the need for a peace movement? Because over the years, terror has cost hundreds of lives across many decades in the valley, and we haven't seen those voices in the past coming out on the street calling for peace.
Yeah, of course, that's a fact. But this is perhaps for the first time that we are seeing tourists attacked, innocent tourists attacked at a place when without any provocation from anywhere, and it somewhere has kind of deeply touched all of us. It's not about I may have articulated it in a certain way, but the sentiment on the street which you have seen right across the valley, be it from Kulgam to Kupwara, from Shupian to Sopore, people have come out spontaneously and not just express condemnation, but also stand in solidarity. So I think this is the first time. What is really kind of the main point being that the civil society has responded, perhaps for the first time, and stood in solidarity with the rest of the country, the civil society itself. Perhaps somewhere we are going back to our roots, our DNA, where it's seen as a violation of our own beliefs, our value systems, the social norms, humanity. Somewhere, I think it's come together in that form, and that's where what I said about that we do feel responsible about in some way and have articulated in that fashion.
But this would then require, Haseeb, civil society to clearly say no to guns and also condemn Pakistan. Because in the end, it's Pakistan-sponsored state that has sponsored this terror for 3.5 decades in the valley. Will those voices that are coming out on the streets calling for peace call out, also speak out loud and clear against Pakistan that has bloodied the valley?
I am sure that will also happen. But what is important first is a move away from, if you've seen the last 3 decades, Rajdeep, it's only been about how the state has responded to it, be it the union government or the state, the local government, the state. But for the first time, you're seeing a movement emerging from the civil society itself, and that's an important development. I tend to believe that the disengagement, the alienation in the valley historically has been a result of the disengagement with the larger civil society of India, where in other parts of the country, there has been a massive disengagement. I think that's where the core lies. And that is my argument for saying that what we require more than state interventions is a consciousness of the civil society, its institutions of the civil society, which are now responding, beginning to respond, and that should be nurtured into a formalized, institutionalized peace movement, which will give us a lot more than any of the state initiatives.
There is a word you use there, Haseeb, alienation, a word which I have heard several times over the last few decades while covering Kashmir, that Kashmiris are alienated from mainstream India. Today, I could argue that mainstream India is feeling alienated by what happened in Baisaran, that they go to a place for tourism and then are killed because of their religious identity. How does that, in a sense, mutual mistrust and anger that is building, how is that going to be overcome then?
Exactly the point I'm trying to make, that you will feel less and less alienated if this civil society of the rest of the country actually starts engaging with Kashmir. So I do not see it as a governmental problem I have never seen it as a governmental problem. I've seen it more as a civil society problem. And what is happening today in the rest of the country is something that can actually nip this emerging movement in Kashmir early in the birth. If you see how students are being targeted outside in different places, and that's not the way we should go. The state needs to kind of ensure that that doesn't happen, because that is the kind of response which will kill the movement, the nascent movement, people's peace movement in the bud, if that's continued to happen. So we need far more greater interaction, and that's where I think we also misunderstood this whole notion of tourism. Tourism may contribute to the state revenues and stuff. It's never been more than 7-8% of the SDP, so it's over exaggerated. But the value of tourism as a peace industry, where you establish social connectedness through these visits from all over the country and all over the world into Kashmir, actually helps integrate the society much more than any governmental intervention.
You know, the question that arises, Haseeb, is Kashmiri civil society, though, strong enough to resist the gun culture? Is it strong enough to look separatists in the eye, many of whom were patronized by Pakistan? Can civil society now say, enough is enough, we do not want any more violence?
That's exactly what we are at this point of time saying. You saw not just political parties, not just political leaders, not just business organizations, professional groups, lobbyists, be it the bar or whatever, but common people coming out on their own and expressing a strong resentment against what has happened, which is very, very much a part of the Kashmiri DNA. It may not have been visible the last 3 decades, but I see this as a turning point, because people have come out, men and women have come out. The only thing I didn't quite see is the younger crowd in all this, which would have been fabulous to get the younger generation in, because that's what the future is. But for the first time, one is seeing a spontaneous movement coming up, which is not engineered by the forces that are, and seems to be very genuine. And we need to nurture that and formalize it, institutionalize it, because that's what will resolve the whole problem that we have been having. Yes, the civil society of Kashmir has been very strong, but it may not have articulated against the separatist sentiment in recent times. But there also have been major changes in the overall interconnectedness, even at the governance level. So I think all of that, in some ways, has come together to force the civil society to come out in open. You saw candlelight things with women participating, people crying actually, and in all this you also saw how involved the Kashmiris were in trying to address this problem.
You know, but one key touchstone of whether change is really in the air, Haseeb, will be to welcome Kashmiri Pandits back to their homes, to ensure their security is ensured and they can come back to their ancestral homes. It's a long-running issue dating back to the 1990s, but you surely need something major like that to happen for maybe a wider range of people across the ideological spectrum to be convinced that Kashmir is changing and change is in the air.
Before I convince others, I must convince myself. I do not think at an individual level, in collective level, that the issue of Kashmiri Pandits is something that Kashmiris would resent. But yes, the structures of the society have over time changed, and we will have to work with the state to ensure that not only do they come, but they actually get integrated with the society as it was the case earlier. So yes, it would be a touchstone, very important one, a landmark one. But before we go to that, we should at least ensure that the existing civil society is encouraged to move out, get into gatherings of this kind in other institutions, including mosques, pray for atonement, pray for the prosperity of everybody, including ourselves. I think that's where the story will lie. Today, the Kashmiri has in some ways lost faith in himself. He's trying to regain that and will assert eventually.
You know, there is a certain sense that a certain kind of radicalized Islam also has taken the place of the more syncretic Sufi traditions of the valley. And this is again going back to decades. Do you believe there can be a pushback against that form of extremism which pits itself in a vocabulary that is radicalized. I mean, radicalized Islam is still a major challenge, isn't it?
That's not the DNA of Kashmir. I mean, we're very clearly, we need to rediscover ourselves. And I think that's the challenge. And what gives me hope is the way it has panned out after such a event, a carnage that happened. It seems to have shaken up everybody. I can tell you, Rajdeep, every single person I have spoken to, relatives, friends, acquaintances, it is just the sentiment on the street is exactly what I have written about. And there's a phrase in Kashmiri which says that, we are in a situation where we can't face ourselves. And that's what I've written about. And that's what I see.
Well, let's hope that your plea for a peace movement to start in the Kashmir Valley translates into reality on the ground. Maybe there are some little straws of hope blowing in the wind at the moment across what's been a turbulent valley. Haseeb Drabu, for joining me here on India Today. Thank you very much.